My husband swore he forgave me. We even renewed our vows. But last night, I found something hidden under our bed that proves he's been planning something for months, and it's not love. I never thought starting a family would make someone in Clyde's family lose their mind. But that's exactly what happened. And to this day, I still can't believe how far Rachel went. I'm Samantha, 29, married to the love of my life, Clyde, who's 31. We met 6 years ago at a barbecue thrown by a mutual friend. Picture this, warm summer evening, the smell of grilled corn in the air, people laughing, and Clyde bumps into me, spilling his drink all over my shirt. He froze, looking horrified, and I just burst out laughing. Something about how flustered he looked was kind of adorable. We ended up talking for hours that night, sitting on a porch swing under a string of lights. It felt like the start of something real. Fast forward 3 years, we got married, and honestly, those first few years were magic. He's the calm to my chaos, the kind of man who listens even when I don't make sense. He teaches high school history, so he's got this calm, old soul energy. I'm a graphic designer, creative, messy, caffeine dependent. We balance each other out. Our life was simple and peaceful. We'd cook dinner together after work, usually some random recipe we found online, then curl up on the couch to binge a show. Nothing fancy. Just comfortable. Until the day Clyde suggested we move into his mom's house. Now, don't get me wrong, I love his mom, Eileen. She's sweet, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who always smells like lavender and keeps her teacups organized by color. But the idea of living with my mother-in-law? That sounded like one of those situations people write Reddit horror stories about. Still, Clyde explained that the house was huge, a 2-story place his dad built before passing away from cancer 5 years ago. Eileen was living there alone, and he didn't want her to feel lonely. He promised we'd have the entire upstairs to ourselves. It sounded reasonable, and I didn't want to be the wife who said no to helping family. So, we moved in. And at first, it was perfect. Eileen respected our privacy, always kind, always thoughtful. She'd even joked about ringing a little bell before coming upstairs, though I told her she didn't have to. Every morning, we'd bump into her in the kitchen while she made her tea, and she'd chat with us about her garden or a book she was reading. We'd have dinner together once or twice a week, and it actually felt cozy, peaceful. Then Rachel entered the picture. Clyde's sister, 33, loud, confident, the type who walks into a room like she owns the place. Growing up, Clyde said she'd always been protective of him. I thought that sounded sweet. I imagined she'd become the sister I never had. Yeah, I was so wrong. From day one, Rachel treated me like an uninvited guest at her personal family reunion. Every smile came with a sting, a backhanded comment about my clothes or my job, always disguised as friendly advice. I told myself she'd warm up eventually. Spoiler, she didn't. Rachel lived just 20 minutes away with her husband, Tom, and their 2 kids, cute, energetic little ones, 7 and 5. She visited Eileen almost every day. At first, I thought, wow, what a caring daughter. But it didn't take long to realize she wasn't visiting out of love, she was checking up on us. One afternoon, about 6 months after we moved in, I came home early from work. I wasn't feeling great, dizzy, exhausted, the kind of day where you just want your bed. But when I opened the door to our upstairs space, my stomach dropped. Rachel was there, rummaging through our drawers like she owned the place. I remember standing there, speechless, before asking, Rachel? What exactly are you doing in here? She didn't even look embarrassed. Oh, I'm just looking for an old photo album, she said smoothly. Except I knew she was lying. We'd already organized all the family photos downstairs weeks ago. Something in me snapped that day. I told her politely that she had no reason to be in our space. She scoffed, looked around, and said, "This place is a mess. Guess you don't know how to keep a proper home." I could feel my face burning. I told her Clyde and I both worked full-time, and we did our best. That's when she lost it. She called me lazy, ungrateful, said I didn't deserve to live in her family's house. Then she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't worry. Clyde will figure out what kind of woman you really are, and when he does, you'll be out of here." I stood there shaking. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her out, though part of me wanted to. I just waited for her to storm downstairs and leave. When Clyde got home that night and saw my face, he knew something was wrong. I told him everything. He was furious, said he'd talk to her himself. The next day, he did. Rachel, of course, denied everything. Said I was exaggerating, trying to make her look bad. But Clyde didn't buy it. He told her if she couldn't respect me, she wasn't welcome in our part of the house anymore. That should have been the end of it. But instead, it lit a fuse. Rachel started whispering to the rest of the family, aunts, uncles, cousins, claiming I was trying to isolate Clyde to make him turn against them. Suddenly, family dinners got awkward. People looked at me differently. Like they weren't sure who to believe. Still, I kept trying. I smiled, brought desserts to family gatherings, asked about her kids, even sent gifts for birthdays. But it didn't matter. Rachel had decided I was the enemy. And things really blew up at Thanksgiving. We were hosting dinner that year, both families invited. I wanted it to be perfect. I spent days cleaning, decorating, even begged Eileen for old family recipes to make it special. For a few hours, it was special. Until Rachel arrived, with 3 random friends in tow. I blinked. Rachel, we weren't expecting extra guests, I said as politely as possible. There's not enough food for. She cut me off, loud enough for everyone to hear. Wow, you really can't handle sharing, can you? You just have to make everything about you. The room went dead silent. And then, she exploded. Accused me of trying to take over the family, said I was manipulating Eileen and turning her against her own daughter. I was shaking, fighting back tears, but Clyde didn't hesitate. He told her to leave, her and her friends. She did, but not before throwing one last look at me that said this wasn't over. And she was right. It wasn't. Because after that day, Rachel's behavior only got darker. She started demanding that we sell the house and split the money. She said it wasn't fair that we lived there rent-free while she had a mortgage. No matter how many times we explained that we paid for bills, maintenance, groceries, she didn't care. She made up lies about me, even started showing up at my job to cause scenes. Imagine your coworkers whispering after your sister-in-law yells at you in the lobby. Yeah, it was humiliating. My boss even pulled me aside one day, asking if everything was okay at home. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was harassment. Clyde and I talked about moving out. But Eileen's alone, and that house, it's full of memories. His dad built it, and it feels like a piece of him still lives there. Leaving because of Rachel would feel like letting her win. But staying? Staying is breaking us apart piece by piece. I've tried everything, coffee talks, gifts, babysitting her kids, but she just hates me. Clyde's torn, trying to protect me while not losing his sister. And Eileen, she just stays quiet, like silence is safer than taking sides. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I love my husband, but this constant tension feels like poison creeping into our marriage. And the worst part? Things are about to get even worse. Because the moment I told Rachel I was pregnant, everything spiraled out of control. It's been about 2 months since I last shared what happened, and wow, so much has changed. Before I get into the chaos and the breakthroughs, I just want to say, thank you. The kind messages, the advice, the empathy, it meant the world. Reading those comments made me realize I wasn't crazy for feeling what I felt, and it gave me the strength to finally take action. Because trying to keep the peace? Trying to ignore Rachel's behavior? Yeah, that clearly wasn't working. So Clyde and I decided it was time to stop playing defense. We started by having a long, honest conversation with Eileen. I'll admit, I was nervous. My stomach was in knots just thinking about it. But Eileen deserved to know everything that had been going on, not just the watered-down version we'd been giving her. To our surprise, she wasn't as oblivious as we thought. In fact, she sighed, took off her glasses, and said quietly, I know Rachel's been talking. She's been complaining about you to me for months. My heart sank. But then she added, I didn't believe most of it. I just didn't know how to stop it without making things worse. She looked so tired. Like a woman who'd been holding her breath for years. She admitted she felt trapped, stuck between her 2 kids, afraid that taking sides would break her family apart. Then she said something that completely changed the way I saw things. Apparently, Rachel had always struggled with change. When Clyde left for college, Eileen said Rachel took it really hard. She'd become moody, distant, even a little possessive. Eileen suspected that Rachel's hostility toward me wasn't really about me, it was about her fear of losing her place in the family. And honestly, that made sense. Didn't excuse her behavior, but it made sense. Eileen suggested we have a family meeting. At first, I thought that was a terrible idea. I pictured Rachel screaming, me crying, and Clyde caught in the middle again. But after talking it over, we agreed. If we wanted peace, we had to face this storm head-on. So we set a date. Invited Rachel and Tom over for dinner. The days leading up to it were nerve-wracking. I cleaned the house like it was being inspected by royalty. Clyde kept pacing the halls, muttering things like, maybe this will finally fix it, then immediately, or maybe it'll make everything worse. Eileen spent half a day baking Rachel's favorite dessert, lemon meringue pie, saying maybe a sweet start could soften the night. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. Rachel and Tom walked in, smiling stiffly. You could feel the tension, thick, heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Dinner was awkward. Small talk about the weather, the kids, the latest TV shows, anything but what we were really there to talk about. Then, after dessert, Clyde cleared his throat and said softly, why don't we move to the living room? And just like that, the air shifted. Rachel sat down, arms crossed, already defensive. Before anyone else could speak, she said, I know what this is about. You're trying to make me look like the bad guy. You've been trying to steal my family from the start. Her words hit like darts. But this time, I didn't shrink. I took a deep breath, I could literally feel my hands trembling, and I said, Rachel, I'm not trying to steal anyone. But what you've been doing, it's hurtful. And it needs to stop. I listed specific things she'd said, times she'd crossed boundaries, how her actions made me feel unwelcome in my own home. I kept my tone calm, no yelling, no accusations. Just truth. Clyde backed me up. He said, Rachel, I love you, but the way you've treated Sam isn't okay. She's my wife. This is her home too. Rachel's jaw tightened, like she wanted to argue, but before she could, Tom spoke up. And that changed everything. Tom's usually quiet, the kind of man who blends into the background during family gatherings. But when he started talking, the room went completely still. He admitted that Rachel's obsession with the family house, and her resentment toward me, had been tearing their marriage apart. He said she'd been spending more time at Eileen's than at home, leaving him to handle the kids alone. He looked exhausted. You could see the pain in his eyes. Rachel froze. It was like no one had ever said those words to her out loud before. Then, suddenly, she broke down crying. Through tears, she said she felt like she was losing her place in the family, that she'd felt replaced ever since I came into Clyde's life. She said walking into the house now hurt her, seeing the walls repainted, the furniture rearranged, our wedding photos on display, it felt like her childhood was being erased. And honestly, for the first time, I understood her. I told her I was sorry she felt that way, that I didn't want to erase her past, just build my own life here too. But I also made it clear that her behavior, the rumors, the insults, the constant interference, wasn't okay. That conversation was one of the hardest I've ever had. There were tears, long pauses, even some apologies that came out shaky and half-whispered. But it was real. It was raw. By the end of the night, Rachel apologized, genuinely, I think, and we agreed to try and start fresh. We laid out clear boundaries. She'd call before visiting. Our upstairs space was private. No more gossip or spreading rumors. And we'd all try to communicate like adults. Rachel even agreed to consider therapy to deal with her issues about change and family dynamics. It wasn't some fairy tale ending, I knew better than that, but for the first time in years, it felt like we were actually moving forward instead of fighting uphill. The next week, I noticed a real difference. Rachel called before stopping by. She was polite. Calm. She even invited Clyde and me over for dinner at her place, which had never happened before. It was a little awkward, sure, but she tried. And that meant something. Eileen looked lighter than I'd seen her in years. She even started talking about taking a vacation, something she hadn't done since Robert passed away. Maybe, for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to play referee anymore. Clyde and I had a lot of late-night talks after that meeting. He admitted he felt guilty for not standing up to Rachel sooner, for letting things go on as long as they did. But if anything, the whole mess brought us closer. I'm not naive. I know it'll take time for trust to rebuild. There are still moments when I catch Rachel's expression and wonder if she's holding something back, if the peace will last. But for now, I'm hopeful. Next weekend, we're having a family picnic at the park where Clyde and Rachel used to play as kids. It was Rachel's idea, actually. And maybe, just maybe, this is the start of a new chapter. I'll keep you all posted, because after everything we've been through, I've learned one thing: family drama never stays quiet for long. It's been 3 months since my last update, and honestly, I wish I had better news. For a while, it actually felt like things were finally getting better. Rachel was calm, polite, she even started showing small acts of kindness that made me think maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. The picnic I mentioned last time? It went surprisingly well. Rachel laughed, told stories about her and Clyde's childhood, the time they built a secret fort in Eileen's garden, or when Clyde got grounded for sneaking out to catch fireflies. For the first time, I saw the version of Rachel that Clyde always talked about: warm, funny, protective. And for a few weeks, I let myself believe that maybe the nightmare was over. But then, we shared our news. And everything changed. Clyde and I had been trying for a baby for months. We wanted it so badly, and when that little plus sign appeared on the test, I swear my heart nearly burst. We laughed, cried, hugged each other for what felt like forever. It was pure joy. We decided to tell the family over dinner. I can still remember that night, the smell of roasted chicken, soft music playing, and Clyde squeezing my hand under the table before announcing, "We're having a baby." Eileen gasped, her eyes filled with tears. She immediately started talking about knitting baby booties and turning the spare room into a nursery. Her happiness was contagious. But Rachel just froze. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile that makes your stomach twist. She said, "Congratulations," in this tight, forced tone. I brushed it off, maybe she was just processing. But over the next few days, things started to unravel. Rachel began showing up at the house again. Unannounced. Sometimes at normal hours, sometimes not. One night, it was 11 p.m. when the doorbell rang. Clyde and I were already in bed. When he opened the door, there was Rachel, hair messy, eyes wide, saying she'd had a bad dream and needed to check on Mom. Another time, she showed up at 6 in the morning on a Saturday. "I was in the neighborhood," she said cheerfully, holding a bag of muffins. "Thought I'd stop by for breakfast." Eileen was still asleep. We were barely awake. It was bizarre. At first, we tried to be patient. Maybe she was struggling with something. But then her visits started crossing lines again. Rachel began rearranging things in our part of the house, saying she was baby-proofing. She moved furniture around, unplugged lamps, even taped down cords. One day I came home to find her reorganizing our kitchen cabinets, lecturing me about which cleaning products were dangerous for infants. When I asked her, again, to stop touching our stuff, she snapped. "You're being ungrateful," she hissed. "I'm trying to help. You're too hormonal to think straight." That word, hormonal, felt like a slap. Like everything I said or felt suddenly didn't matter because I was pregnant. It was like all the progress we'd made, gone in an instant. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. One afternoon, I came home early from work. Nausea had been hitting hard that week. All I wanted was to crawl into bed and sleep. But when I walked into our bedroom, Rachel was there. In our room. Going through our closet. I froze. My heart started pounding. "Rachel, what are you doing?" She barely looked up. "I'm just looking for some baby clothes. Mom said there might be some old ones stored here." That was a lie. We'd already gone through every box in that house when we moved in. "Rachel," I said quietly but firmly, "you need to leave." She stopped moving. Slowly turned toward me. And then she just exploded. She started yelling, saying this was her family's house, that I had no right to tell her what to do in it. That I was an outsider, taking over everything that used to be hers. And then, the words that truly broke me. "It should be me having a baby here, not you." I swear, for a moment, I couldn't even breathe. She went on, ranting about how unfair it was, how she'd grown up in this house, how she'd always imagined raising her kids here, surrounded by family. That I'd stolen that dream from her. By the time Clyde came home, I was shaking. He walked in to find Rachel screaming and me near tears. He didn't hesitate. He told her, calm but deadly serious, that she had crossed the line. That until she could respect our space and our family, she was not welcome in our home. Rachel stood there trembling, her face red with fury. Then she pointed at me and said, "You'll regret this," and stormed out. Since then, things have only gotten worse. She's been calling Eileen nonstop, spinning new stories, saying we're trying to push mom out, that we don't want her involved in the baby's life. She's posting these vague, passive-aggressive things on social media. Stuff like, funny how some people pretend to be family while destroying yours, or, some homewreckers wear smiles. It's exhausting. And heartbreaking. Eileen's caught in the middle, again. She loves both her children, and now her unborn grandchild. She keeps trying to mediate, but I can tell it's tearing her apart. The stress is showing on her face, she's not sleeping well, she forgets things. It's worrying all of us. Clyde and I are at a crossroads. We love this house. We love Eileen. But the stress, the tension, it's not good for me, and definitely not for the baby. We've started talking seriously about moving out. It breaks my heart even to say it, but maybe it's time. Our child has to come first. We're planning another talk with Eileen soon, to explain how bad things have gotten, and to gently suggest that Rachel needs professional help. Because this isn't just jealousy anymore. It feels deeper, darker. If things don't change, we'll have to leave. And that thought hurts more than I can describe. This house holds so many memories, Clyde's dad, our first years of marriage, the laughter, the love. But we can't raise a baby in chaos. I'll update again when we know what happens next. And to everyone who's followed our story, thank you. Your support means more than you know. I just hope the next time I write, it'll be with some peace, before Rachel's behavior spirals even further. It's been 6 weeks since my last update, and honestly, it feels like a lifetime. I'm now 20 weeks pregnant, and Clyde and I just found out, we're having a little girl. When the doctor said the words, I felt tears spill down my face before I even realized I was crying. A daughter. Our daughter. After everything we've been through, that tiny heartbeat on the monitor gave me hope again. But that joy has been tangled up with fear. Because Rachel, Clyde's sister, hasn't stopped. In fact, she's gotten worse. After our last confrontation, her behavior spiraled into something that didn't even feel rational anymore. It started with emails. Long, rambling messages sent in the middle of the night, entire pages switching between apologies and blame. One minute she'd be begging us to forgive her, saying she just wanted her family back. The next, she'd accuse me of ruining her life, of poisoning Clyde against her. And then she started showing up at our jobs. Yes, literally. She came to Clyde's school twice, once during his class. He had to escort her outside while students whispered behind his back. And she showed up at my office more than once. My boss, who's been nothing but kind to me, had to ask her to leave, twice. I wanted to sink into the floor from embarrassment. I knew then, something was seriously wrong. But the real breaking point came 2 weeks ago. Clyde and I had just come home from our 20-week ultrasound appointment. We were glowing, we had the pictures in hand, ready to show Eileen and celebrate the first time we saw our baby's little face. But the second we walked through the door, the air felt wrong. I could smell garlic and onions. The sound of clattering dishes echoed from the kitchen. And then, when I turned the corner, there she was. Rachel. In our kitchen. Cooking dinner like she lived there. Eileen was sitting at the table, looking pale and uncomfortable. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. Rachel, what are you doing here? I asked slowly. She didn't even flinch. I've decided to move back in, she said matter-of-factly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I'll be helping mom with the house. And with the baby, of course. Clyde's jaw tightened. That's not happening, he said immediately. Rachel scoffed. Oh, really? This is my family home, not yours. You can't stop me from being here. My stomach twisted. Her tone wasn't angry, it was unhinged. And then she let something slip that made my blood run cold. She'd already been planning to move in, for weeks. She'd moved some of her things into the basement without telling anyone. That's when Eileen finally broke her silence. Her hands were trembling as she said, Rachel's been pressuring me. She said if I didn't agree, she'd cut me off. Her voice cracked. I didn't know what to do. I just didn't want to lose her. Seeing Eileen like that, scared, caught between her kids, was heartbreaking. But Clyde didn't hesitate this time. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Rachel, you need to leave. Now. Or I'll call the police. That's when everything exploded. Rachel's face twisted, and she started screaming, wild, incoherent, furious. She threw a pan across the room, sending sauce splattering across the wall. Clyde tried to calm her down, but she just kept yelling that I'd stolen her family, that she deserved to live here, that I didn't belong. And then, in the chaos, Eileen tried to step between them. Rachel swung her arm, knocking over a chair, and Eileen stumbled. And hit her head on the edge of the counter. Everything froze. Then Clyde shouted her name. I swear my heart stopped. Eileen collapsed to the floor. The next few hours were a blur, sirens, flashing lights, hospital corridors. I kept replaying it in my head over and over, that awful sound of her hitting the counter. Thankfully, Eileen was okay. Just a mild concussion. But it shook all of us to our core. At the hospital, we learned something that finally made sense, and yet made everything so much sadder. Rachel had been struggling with mental health issues for a long time. She'd stopped taking her medication months ago without talking to her doctor. It explained the paranoia, the mood swings, the sudden bursts of rage. But it didn't make it any less terrifying. In the aftermath, Clyde and I had to make one of the hardest decisions of our lives. We filed for a restraining order. It broke our hearts, truly. She's still family. She's still his sister. But we have to protect ourselves, and our baby. Eileen, bless her heart, agreed to start therapy. She realized she couldn't keep trying to fix everything on her own, that she needed help too. And Rachel's husband, Tom, has been doing his best to make sure Rachel gets professional care. He's apologized more times than I can count. You can see the heartbreak in his eyes, but also the exhaustion. For now, we've decided to stay in the house. Eileen needs us close, and honestly, this place, despite everything, is still home. We're converting the basement into a small apartment for Eileen, so she has her own private space and more independence. It feels like the right move, for her peace, and for ours. The past few months have been brutal, but maybe, just maybe, we're finally turning a corner. Clyde and I are focusing on the baby now, our little girl. We've started painting the nursery a soft cream color, and Eileen's been crocheting tiny blankets and socks. There's laughter again in the house. Still moments of sadness, sure, but also hope. After everything that's happened, that's what I'm holding on to. Hope for peace. Hope for healing. Hope that our daughter will grow up in a home filled not with chaos, but with love. Thank you to everyone who's been following our story, for the advice, the encouragement, the compassion. You've carried me through more than you know. Here's to a new chapter, one without screaming, fear, or heartbreak. Just family. And maybe, finally, peace. The end.